You're on.
I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting for the Board of Finance for June 12th, 2024. Start with Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. There are only 4 of us in attendance tonight. Nahid and Brian could not make it. There is nobody here for public comment. So we're on to communication and correspondence.
Okay, so in the last month, we received emails, one from Kim Abreu and one from Andy Correa.
Thank you. And on to the approval.
And I move that we approve the special meeting minutes of May 15th, which was treated like a regular meeting just a week after a normal time. So that's why it's a special meeting. And the special one that was May 30th to 7:30.
I'll second.
Perfect. Any discussion on those? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Sounds good. Steve, it's your game.
Great, thanks. I won't be real long tonight. You got the debt policy review. We got a comment from Dan. I know you're going to discuss that tonight. We hired a new pension attorney. We went out to bid. We got a number of bids back. We narrowed it down to 2 who we thought were really good. Scott McCarthy was part of the process and on the committee. He sits on the RBAC. We made a decision to hire a new pension attorney. Really, really good. When you say, we met with them today for really the first time to discuss one issue, boy, sharp, really good. So we're happy about that. We are finalizing our memos of understanding with all of the sports clubs in town. We are starting a process where for each season, each player will be contributing $10 per season per sport played. That money will be set in a separate account for sports field improvements and management only. Newtown does this now, and they have over $1 million in that account over the years, and they use it for improving fields, putting up backstops, doing all those sorts of things, and we anticipate doing the same thing. We're working on that. Summer camp's going to start going pretty soon. That's going well at Cadigan. On the docks, we were able to repair the docks, and so they're usable this year. Before they go into storage for next year, we're going to look at them really, really carefully. Okay? Time to get your dog licenses, people. And if you feel so inclined, you can enter the contest for the cutest dog in town. Today, we had a 3-hour training for election security. Our fire, EMS, police, finance, everybody was involved, about 20 people, 3-hour program. It's all to make sure that we're ready in case anything happens during the election. And we have some good conversations there. After spending time there, I am absolutely confident in our ability of our fire, police, and EMS to respond to anything. There wasn't any subject that came up that they weren't right on top of it. So I was really happy to see that.
Are there police at polls? I don't even know.
I'm sorry, are there?
There's no police at polls. Are there police at polls? Yes.
We have police
Okay.
at the request of the registrars,
Yeah.
and Marcia's going to discuss this a little further. In the last referendum, based on a recommendation from John Puglisi, given the heightened
Yep.
bomb threats, all of that sort of thing, John was really wanted us to have people, and so we did. We had a police officer, and Marcia will discuss the cost with you. I thought that was the right decision. It was a short-term thing. We had to make that decision. I think we will continue that in the future. One of the things I'd like to talk about is John raises a very good concern. Do we want that many people in our schools during a school day? Perhaps move to Saturdays for votes. Has to have a long discussion, have to talk to everybody in town, but if you did that, then you wouldn't have that worry. Something to think about, right? Something to have a real conversation with everybody in town. On the cell tower, I've given you revenue and expense options on that, so you can see what the cost options are. Right now, the Board of Selectmen at the last meeting got an updated proposal from Homeland Towers. They are going to give us finalized versions of, we have A and B, now we're looking at C and D, which are further away up on the hill from the high school, minimum I think about 1,200 feet from the high school. They're gonna send those to us. Once we get them, we're gonna refer that to planning, because we need an 824 referral from planning. Anytime we want to work on town property and put a permanent installation, which I would consider a cell tower to be, they need to review it. And so that's a normal process. We also sent it to Conservation Committee because it is up north of Gursky. It is in what I would call open space. And so we want their comments too. And obviously, we welcome comments from the public. Audit, Marcia will talk about it a little
Before
further.
you go any further
Yeah.
on that, let's just
Yeah.
brush on this briefly.
Sure.
So looking at your numbers, it says here rental to lease tower space on Vale Road. The one tower we're talking about is Long Meadow Hill. Are we gonna have equipment on that Long Meadow Hill
Yeah,
tower?
oh, absolutely. Because
And-
we need it down in Barker
Okay,
Falls.
so that would, the cost would be relatively the same.
Yes, they quoted us the same price to be on either tower.
So from a town side, just strictly from operational, we need a tower out there to be safe for our people.
Yes.
So I understand the battles the Board of Selectmen are
Yes.
going through, but from a money point of view now, and safety's always number one,
Mhm.
we all agree with that, there's nobody here. But you have here that the net expense to the town, if it were to go on a private piece of property, is $72,000 annually
Right. To get beyond both towers.
to be on both towers, so it'd be an extra $36,000 to go on the Long Meadow Tower.
No, Long Meadow is one, Vale Road is the other. Total is 72,000. 36,000 per tower.
Correct. So we're already paying on Vale Road.
Not yet, but we're about to.
Right, but we already locked
Yep.
into that. So that 36, we're already to have to absorb into the budget. So now we're talking about 36,000 more dollars to go on to the new tower.
Correct.
And the differential is if we were to put it on the town property, we would be 18,000 to the plus.
Right, because we would get the tower on Town Road by the high school for free. We
Right.
get access for free, and they would lower the cost of Vale Road, the rent on Vale Road.
And we get revenue for them using.
And we would get
town
rental from the, renting the site. So the swing is $90,000. 72,000 in expense to $18,000 in revenue.
Correct. That's part of what, again, and this is what, at your meeting, I watch your meeting, and I gotta say, it's disappointing to see one of our first selectmen, or our first selectmen board playing poker with the cell phone tower guys calling bluffs, and it's $100,000 swing, and like it's nothing, and safety's number one, but calling bluffs, we gotta be better than calling bluffs, we gotta know what we're doing. This
And-
is $90,000, which is, gonna increase your budget. These are the things that add up, that creep into budgets,
That
that
don't go
make
away.
differences that you can't get rid of. You can't cut this line item.
Nope.
So when we're sitting here next year and the decision is to put it on private property, which could even be closer than the town property to the school, because we don't have a say at that
Yeah.
point, we're looking at a $90,000 swing.
Correct. And I think I've said this many, many times, but I think it's worth saying again. Homeland and their carriers can prove to the siting council they need this tower. The siting council will, if they prove that they need it, and they never go for approval for a tower unless they can prove they need it, they will build a tower. It will go somewhere, most likely on Long Meadow Hill Road, somewhere.
Now, at your meetings, I've been watching, you have like 15 to 20 people that come speak. There's 11,000 voters.
Yes.
So again, we're hearing a small portion of the town at these meetings coming to you. And I keep hearing, again, one of the selectmen saying, the people have spoken, the people have spoken. 20 people,
20 people, and most of them against. There was, I think one man was for because he had a
But-
fire in his house and had to drive up the hill.
20 people out of a percentage of 11,000 voters is not the majority.
No, but remember, if we decide to do this, we would have to go to town meeting.
Right.
And that's the
Okay.
opportunity for.
That's an
the
opportunity for everyone to
voters
come in,
to-
vote, and weigh in, right? I think it's important enough, this is a big enough structure, and it's permanent enough. This isn't a 2-year thing, or 4-year
Correct.
thing.
No, it's a
They're asking for
30-year,
a 50-year
50-year,
lease.
but 30-year minimum,
30-year minimum, so this is.
55-year.
This is a long-term decision. That's why we ask conservation to weigh in, because this is not something, and once it's up, you're there. Once you give a 30-year lease, it's gonna be there.
But that's why I want to talk about it, because all you're talking about at the Board of Selectmen meeting is the tower itself. Nobody's talking about the financial aspect of this.
I did at the Board of Selectmen meeting 2 meetings ago,
Okay.
and I brought up this information.
It-
It didn't seem to
It got lost.
register with a lot of people.
No, and I think that we need this to be discussed, that, and again, if the people of the town vote, they don't want the tower, then we deal with the
I'm
money.
fine with that. Yeah, we'll deal with it.
But I think it needs to be out there that people need to understand this is $90,000 a year swing. We as a Board of Finance sit here looking to cut $10,000 items out of the budget
Yeah.
at certain points.
That's a $90,000 swing of something that's gonna happen.
It's
This is what
gonna-
I'm saying, it's gonna happen.
Right.
This is not gonna happen unless they call in the bluff, as one of our selectmen says.
There's no bluff here. They will, if they have to. I think, this is my opinion, they get enough revenue from the carriers that they could easily go to somebody in Long Meadow Hill and offer them more than they're offering us, because they'll pass that cost on to the carriers. There's no doubt in my mind that Ray Brigatti, he's always been straightforward with the town, he works for Homeland Towers, that he has said that he has someone who is willing to lease property for the tower. I believe him.
Yeah, I think we just need to be caught. Safety is always first, and I think none
Always
of us
first.
will disagree with that. However, inevitable and safe needs to have a solid decision behind it.
Yes.
And while you're still there, Center School, at your meeting, I got a little confused. You and I had a conversation
Yeah.
as well offline.
That's
Of
one of the things.
Bob Belden said that the decision was made that we're putting a library and the community center on the Center School property. And nowhere in the records could I find a decision made. Now, I know the ad hoc committee went through the process and said, hey, this is what we think is the best use, and it was a lot of people, a lot of hard work, a lot of pages. But that was also 3 to 4 years ago.
Yep.
That the study was done, and I'm not saying I'm personally against it or for it, I'm just saying, as far as I know, no decision's really been made. We're looking at the best use of the property and how to fund it either way, but no decision's truly been put through the town.
No, it has not. The new committee, which has been formed, was difficult to do, but we got it done. Their charge specifically includes, you should go back and look at everything. If people or organizations within town come to you with needs that they want and things that they want to see in a new community center, you should absolutely consider it and incorporate it, right? This is not just library, parks and rec, right? The ad hoc committee, if you remember, let's go back and understand what their charge was. Their charge was to find the highest and best use for Center School in the future. They interviewed dozens of organizations in town. They talked to hundreds of people. And their report came back and said the highest uses and needs of the town are with Parks and Rec and with library. My guess is that hasn't changed,
Correct.
right?
Probably
That
hasn't.
is the starting point for the new committee. They need to look at this. It has been 4 years. They need to, again, go out, gather information, like we did with Candlewood Lake Elementary School. Get people's input. What do we need? What do we want? I suggest in their charge, I know there is a need for meeting rooms, right? That should be a significant consideration. And that's not just for Parks and Rec or Library. That's just for citizens and residents and historical group and the Flower Club, whatever, Boy Scouts, their leaders want to have a meeting. So it is still open. We suggest everyone in town, once this committee starts getting up and running, give them your ideas. I mean, we got some really good ideas from residents
Granted.
at Candlewood Lake Elementary. We really did.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is, I just want to make sure that everybody understands, no decision's been truly made.
No.
You know,
it's
I
not
got
written in
I got a
stone.
few phone calls like, oh, we're doing this, and it's like, no,
No.
we're still in the
We're still in-
process.
So the charge also says that we have the $100,000 for them to hire a consultant. That consultant will be charged with telling us what it would cost to rehab Center School after you decide the needs, and give us preliminary designs, which we ask you bring out to the public on a regular basis so they can give you input, and build new, just like we did with Candle Lake Elementary School. And then we as a town will make a decision. Is this what we want to do? Is what they've come up with make sense for our town as to the facilities and what's going to be in there? And make a decision, should we rehab or should we build new? It's still open for discussion, and we want that input. It's too big a decision to just say, okay, look, We made a decision 4 years ago.
Right.
I think Bob's point was that the ad hoc center school committee did an amazing amount of work and did a really, really good job. And he just wanted to reiterate, their two biggest were Parks and Rec and Library by a large margin, right?
Yep. All right, thank you.
Oh, and just two more things. The pickleball courts are slightly delayed because we have to move 400 cubic feet of dirt. And to do that, we have to get a permit from the town. The
That
permit-
takes forever.
Don't you know somebody?
I do know a couple people. That permit has been applied for and should be approved shortly. And you know what? It makes sense. You don't want somebody on their property moving 10,000 yards of dirt, building a hill, or filling in something. So that's what we're.
So where's this dirt going?
Just from one end to the other
Okay.
to get it level.
Oh.
Just from one end to the other, just to get it
Go out
level.
there, wheelbarrows?
We got the new stairs in. I don't know if you noticed them over at
I
the
saw the pictures.
far edge. They're incredible. The fifth grade moving up class
Eighth grade.
used it yesterday, on Friday. I'm sorry, no, was it yesterday?
Yesterday.
Eighth grade.
Was it yesterday? It was yesterday. I mean, this place was full of people. No one fell down the hill. That we got a report, so that's a good thing. The concerts have started. We got the first concert in. It did rain towards the end, and we encourage everybody to come out and go to a concert. And also, the farmer's market is starting the 21st, which is over here. And that's it for the first selectmen's report, unless you have any other questions.
Not at all. Anybody else have questions? Perfect. Marcia, let's move on to you then.
All right. You've received the reports. The revenue is about $160,000 better than it was last month. That's primarily because the Blake fine came in for $120,000. We had known it was coming, and it finally was in. So we're still in great shape with revenue. They voted not to reduce interest rates, and it looks like they are not going to reduce them for a while. And in our budget for next year, we had the interest rates reducing, so we should be in good shape next year. I would hope on the interest revenues as well. Always have to worry about arbitrage, but
We'll pay arbitrage.
the expenditures that you have this in your report. There's an updated report that you've got printed. I don't remember which one you received. It's $500 different. At the time I did the first report, I put in that the Board of Ed needed $675,000, and they only needed $674,329.
So when we make a motion though, that's what you guys pass at the
Yeah.
Board of
Yes.
Selectmen? Okay.
Yes, this is all tied out to what they passed. This is just a summary of where we need more money and where we're taking more money. The Board of Ed needs the $674, and of course, that's all part of the contingency that you have arranged with them and talked to them
Yeah.
about, and we have it in our fund balance policy. To cover that, it's a little higher than the contingency, so we've scoured other accounts to try and take it from. The labor legal, that we had originally asked for more money in December, and you said, and only because we had spent like 85% of our budget and we're halfway through the year, we didn't have anything specific. You said, come back when you have something specific, and so we're not coming back until now, because up in the first half of the year, we were spending about $4,500 a month, and in the second half of the year, we've been spending about $2,500 a month. So we're looking for $5,500 there, and again, that's still an estimate. Things could happen in June and that we don't know about, but that is our best guess as of the date we did this. Adding security at the polling places, that there was an officer at each polling place for both the presidential primary and for the referendum. I was trying to see if I could find the registrars today, but they had already left. That I thought that the state also recommended that, besides just the police chief. But the total is about 4,500. It's all outside services, so it goes to ourselves. And the registrars covered a part of that with their budget, savings in their budget, but they couldn't cover the whole thing. So we're looking for 4,032 in that fund. And we would take the money from contingency, again, what it was designed for. And then I just went through, and you'll see it on the budget report, to find a lot of other lines that I could analyze and say, okay, if we've got this much through May, or through April, I guess, like water, that, and this is what we spent in May and June last year, we should have some extra there, we might have some extra here. So a number of different lines that we've pulled money from to make that balance. Looking at the rest of the year, that we close purchase orders on Friday, the 15th of June. We always close them. One, because we're trying to get rid of some chaos on June 30th. One, because we want the goods or services to be received by June 30th. And we will pay them all by July 31st to fit in with not only our side preparing the financial statements, but the Board of Ed side preparing the EFS report. In talking with Casey a few years ago, the auditors said, oh, you should have a policy for encumbrances. She and I are on the same page that we want everything done by July 31st. That last year okay, ammunition, that seems pretty important. That, but the hours that I spent, the hours that the auditors spent, because Munis just can't handle it. That there is just a switch. We had just different options when Munis was set up. We should have picked a different option years ago. So it's a mess. And so for last year, for $20,000 or so of encumbrances, I think I probably have 20 hours, the auditor probably has 10, 15 hours, and then we both said close enough. So we're just stopping that. So we may next year say, oh, we wouldn't let them do an encumbrance for the ammunition that didn't come in, but they may need it in next year's budget. When I look today at the numbers, it looks like, and again, just really, really big numbers, all payroll. We have 1.5 more payrolls, one more paid and one accrued, it looks like we might be under budget by $125,000 for payroll, and then we should be under budget by on the encumbrances. But again, they have 3 more days to do encumbrances. So I would just wanted to make sure we look like we're under budget. The police, on their budget, we always have the negative contingency. That was my biggest concern. Will they have that? And it usually comes from wages, just like the teacher turnover. This year, my best projection is that they'll be under budget on wages by $27,000. So we may have to find money from other departments to cover the rest of that. But again, unless all people are doing for the next 3 days are purchase orders, we should have money there. But it's not going to be as much as we normally have, because we've been trying to pull it out as we go along. Any questions on that?
Just to your point about the munis, is that something that can get added on and we should be considering for next year's budget?
No, I think that we could hire them to make changes. We can't do it after the fact. We did look into that, and anything we could hire them and have them reprogram stuff, but if we just change, encumbrances are better if they're paid off by July 31st anyway.
Yeah.
So if we just do that, we're in better shape. Cash capital, there's no transfers needed this month. Everything is in good shape. Because the way the bond approval is, that just like last year, it's, we're taking the excess revenue and essentially making an additional appropriation. The 2025 items that are paid with cash, not the items that are paid with next year's taxes, have been added to that report. There's nothing exciting there that I saw. The bonded capital, the Board of Selectmen approved a transfer. We're asking you to review and consider approving that transfer. It's the final one for the boys' locker room. That there was some asbestos, there were some expenses that were added. There's a number of items. I think they're up to purchase order, potential change order number 30. So there was a lot of different changes as they went down the list, but they are almost done with that from the accounting point of view. I haven't seen it myself. So that they're looking for $1,600. We would take that from the 2022 capital projects. Right now, there isn't money in there that, however, there are 2022 projects up there that could release funds and bring them down. I think in total, we did this one other time, I think in total there was 6,000 or 8,000 there that it's a negative fund balance for that particular year, not in total. Let's say every project comes in right on target and we don't have anything extra from other projects, then we would ask for a transfer from capital non-recurring to move into there, because we can't mix the bond years. But I would think, in looking at those projects, that we could find some extra money in there. Update on the police radio. So this has been so confusing that we received an email to say, hey, apply for your 2024 funding. And we thought, oh, more funding, what could we do with it? And it just didn't seem to make sense. Well, what it is I talked to somebody on the phone and she was very, very helpful. That the 963 that was approved is approval 1. That the next step is to get approval 2. And to do that, there's 2 forms that we have to figure out that they're not hard. What we had to figure out was how to log into this with the log me in codes and the me.com or whatever the things are that we use, and we give our child's birth dates and everything else. That so we're in that, and there's 2 forms we have to fill out. I finished one. I'm just working on the second one that will go in the federal grant portal. And then once that second form is finished, that will throw us over to the justice portal, and we fill out more forms there. We have to fill out the federal grant portal by, I think it's the 25th of June, and then the beginning of July is the justice grant portal. It's the forms that I've got so far are not a big deal. So we'll get those done, completed by the due dates. We still have the questions on compliance. This woman that was very, very helpful said that she will find a specialist to send to us to talk to them. But we're not going to stop what we do. We're just going to keep moving forward. That we had the concerns that it's already been bonded, that we didn't go out to bid. We followed the town's purchasing policy because it was a state contract, but we didn't follow the federal uniform grant guidance purchasing policy. We didn't know we were going to get a grant for it. And then the timing of the purchases, that some of these were signed before the fiscal year of the federal government, and that's what Johanna Hayes' office thought would be the earliest date, would be October 1st of 2023. So we're still waiting for a call back from the grant specialist. Our auditors were here this week. We talked to them about it. I, as an auditor, had never seen, them come in and say, oh, we'll waive that for you, that there's no real vehicle to waive the federal rules. That I checked with our auditors if they've ever seen anything like that waived. I gave them the documentation. They have the same concerns. But again, we're not going to stop anything. We're going to just keep moving it forward until someone tells us no.
So if we get this money, what's the mechanism to bring it back into us? What happens with that if we do get any money? We've already bonded the money, correct?
We've already
Yeah.
bonded the money. So what we would do is, we could do, and we did it a few years ago when we gathered up all the extra money we had from each of the different years, and we said, so like, for example, last year we said we'll bond $1 million. Well, here's 963, so we repurpose that money with a Board of Selectmen's meeting, and then we say, okay, we're only taking out 37,000 now, because 963 came from this other one.
Okay.
We've done that before.
I'm just trying to understand and that can't be used for everything and anything, right? That 963, or once we bring it in, it can be used for anything.
No.
No, it has to be
No,
used
it can
for
only be
bond.
used for the radios.
No,
But
So-
what we've already bonded has to be in the
Right.
bonded project that we've already approved.
right,
Yeah.
Yeah, if we repurpose that, which
Right.
the owners.
so this
can-
grant goes into the radio, the bonding money that we save then
Right.
circles back out.
Exactly.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
that goes into the capital
Whatever
we
excess
would-
capital.
We
Is
would
it-
bond
is it-
less than we normally, let's say next year, our bonding is 3 million. We have 963, we do 2,037,000
Of bonding,
Yeah.
Because
but we
we're
can't pay an
transferring-
electric bill with this
No.
money.
No.
it's
I
a-
just want everybody
No.
to be clear that we can't pay an electric bill or a legal fee with this money.
No, it's a bonding change, it's a revenue change, it's not an expenditure change.
Right.
The
Not making sense
expenditures,
to you.
No, it is, I'm just thinking,
Okay.
it is.
the,
It's not a cash capital option either.
correct,
It's just pure bond, okay.
Right, that's what I want people to
Yeah, yeah,
understand though,
yeah.
clearly, that if we do get this money, it's not like, oh, we can go do
We
this.
found-
Right, we can pay legal fees
Yep.
to go do battle. This money has to follow a strict guideline.
correct,
Just
correct. And if we were to say we wanted to do legal fees, we couldn't use any of this bonded money for that because it's not a capital item. So it'd be a tax, we'd have to do more bonds at a taxable sale that,
I just want it to be clear
So-
and on the record.
So, all right.
Go ahead.
We could so, let's say our goal is to be 50% cash, 50% bond.
Mhm.
And let's say it's 2 million each, for instance. We could, next year, say we're gonna do 1 million cash, 3 million bond, because we know that $963,000 is gonna be coming off the bond.
Right,
So
you're
that's
still
how-
bonding
that's
2
how-
million. You're
That's
still-
how you,
right.
okay, that's how you.
If you were comfortable with.
But so you're
3 million
budgeting it as
cash.
bonded
Right.
and then conjuring.
Or you can do a
okay.
reverse of that.
Yeah, okay,
You can do
yep.
2 million cash
Yep.
still and take the
Yep.
1 million off
Yep.
the backside
There's
of the
lots of ways
bond
to do it, but
million.
okay.
Right,
Alright.
there's many ways strategically to look
Yeah,
at it.
okay, gotcha.
But we, like I say, I just want everybody to know, like, this 963 can't go
Isn't
towards
cash in our
this
pocket.
or
Right.
that or whatever.
Yeah, and anybody who thinks that, you're misunderstanding the purpose of this
Oh, yeah.
and why we bonded. And these are for specific projects. You can only spend it on that project.
I bring it up because it's been talked about at your selectmen meetings, and
Yeah.
we're gonna use this money to fight this one or legal battles, and it's like, no,
No.
this is, we can't do that.
No.
All right, perfect, sorry,
And
thank you.
then, this was just a slide, just to quantify the compliance issues that, we have the issue of already bonded, that, 100% of it is already bonded, that, we have the issue that, it didn't go, things that are over 250,000, have to go out to bid, in accordance with the Uniform Grant Guidance. Again, the auditors haven't seen anyone say, oh, it's good enough for the state contract, because the state went out to bid. We'll try it, but they have not seen that. So of this roughly 6 million, 5.5 million was a Motorola contract that should have gone out to bid for the Uniform Grant Guidance rules. So 500,000, if we could get past the first one, we may have 500,000 that we could bond for if we can't get past the second rule. The third rule is what was purchased committed to before October 1st of '23, 5.8 million was before the date of this, so 150,000. If we can get through the other compliance things, maybe we get 150,000 for, mostly it was the dispatch center that was done later in the year.
So, thinking through this a little bit more, is there any add-ons that we're gonna need in the future that we can take
Right.
this $1 million and say, hey, because we haven't started a project yet, is there something on the horizon that we might need as a town with this communications that we're not aware of right now, that's a year or something down the road, that we can think outside the box and say, hey, that's gonna cost us $1 million, instead of losing out on this $1 million, can we be ahead of the game?
We can check with the police department. The package that they bought is an all-encompassing package. We did add some features in the dispatchers for 150,000 to make it more ergonomic and friendly and work better. But all the equipment's been bought, you know, the equipment's been bought. Now, if they come up with something that, oh, we need this too, then yes. I don't think we're gonna find any huge amounts there.
And just saying, if there was something out there that
Yeah.
we didn't quite think about,
We'll
then now's the time.
Yep.
If we left something off because we were afraid of the project getting above $6 million and we said, we'll wait on that, now's the time to dig that skeleton
We'll
out.
double check with the police
Yeah,
department.
and the things I've heard people talk about are, well, how about the rent for the tower? It's not capital, is that
Right,
is
exactly.
capital?
Right.
How about the service contract?
Right.
Not capital. Again, we'll try anything.
Right.
but,
Do we get enough radios? Do we have it? I'm just saying,
Yeah.
hardcore equipment, if we can't get it to go through this process, what equipment could we possibly add on that might be 2-year down the road project?
Yep.
Instead of throwing money away.
Yeah,
Can I, before you move on to?
we'll check.
So
we'll check.
the process went through the state bid process. Is that how it should have been? Like, should it have been UCOA, but we didn't?
We can use the state contracts for like cars, radios, or the state goes out and negotiates.
So the process that we, without knowing about this grant, the process that we did was correct?
Yeah,
It was in line with our
guidelines.
guidelines, with our purchasing
Okay.
policy.
Yeah.
We had 2 different consultants. Had we gone with the other consultants, they had suggested that we go out to bid. I said, well, we know we want Motorola, why would we go out to bid? He said, because the state contract might have options A through E, and you might only need options A and B. So that's where they had found people had saved money. We didn't go with that
Okay.
bidder, or that consultant. All right, and then just, we've been talking about this, I just wanted to quantify that a little bit. ARPA, again, nothing exciting, this is the exact same slide from last year, that the deadline is December 31st, that we're watching them carefully. We don't want to give any funding back. We talked with the auditors about this, and they said, well, if you're using even though it's lost revenue, they need some expenditure to test. So they want us to allocate an expenditure to the lost revenue. And what we did with the grant, the very first COVID grant that we received from the state, is we allocated police salaries. And the reason we do that is we don't have bidding requirements. We don't have any of those requirements. And so it's nice and clean. And so we will do that again for this. We'll allocate funds. Audit update that they started this week, and actually they're done for the week they're here. They're going to the WPCA tomorrow. There's no issues that they've noted at this time, and they'll be back for field work on September 9th and September 16th. They have given us their draft engagement letter, which is in the package.
Yeah, we all got it.
Just email.
Dan commented back as well.
Yes, that it's in the package. There's the fee is as we agreed. There's a few small things that they changed to their template. I said, is this just us you're giving this to? But no, it's everybody. All of them are consistent with the rules and regulations, and just making some things more specific.
So basically, we got their boilerplate.
you
Yeah.
know, boilerplate legalese.
Right,
They only
that's all it is. They
updated it
just
for new
updated their
regulations or
boilerplate
changes in.
for everybody. It's
Correct.
not for us, it's just a boilerplate that they updated
Yep,
as a standard contract.
correct. And that's normal to do that every year. So if they're looking, and they would like the whole Board of Finance to read it because there's some things that are in there that they're required to share with you in the beginning of the audit, and that would be the risk of material misstatement. There's 4 items
Yep,
in the front.
I read it, and I think Dan
I read it.
read it and commented back that there was no issues, that you signed it. You, Marcia, you've also gone through it, right, and highlighted the boilerplate
I
changes.
highlighted any
That was
changes.
helpful, thank you.
Yes.
That was helpful.
Yeah, and some of them, we used to have in our engagement letters, some that way, a little bit different. One, the going concern, that when I was on the auditing standards board, that we made a new rule, and that's why it's in the, it takes a while to get through.
I don't understand how a town has going to spend it, that's what we talked about.
There are,
Okay.
So do we have to make an approval on this?
it depends how formal that, because they're looking for your signature and Steve's signature.
I would very much prefer that the Board of Finance approve the letter.
Okay.
All right, so, you want to do it now?
Yeah,
All right,
sure.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Finance approve the engagement letter for our auditor as forwarded by Marcia today.
A second? I'll second.
I read it and agree that the changes are meaningless, not meaningless, changes are acceptable, thank you.
The fees is exactly in line with what we've talked about. We discussed this at numerous meetings about, and Marcia discussed at other towns that she's talked to, they pay a lot more for their audit, like $20,000 more for their audit service. We're getting a very competitive rate right now. We've gone through no issues as well over the past few years, a good working relationship. So from my point of view, the boilerplate changes are just the standard changes. The fee was agreed to, $1,000 increase, which is basically zero in today's world. $1,000 on $50,000 is a 0% increase year on year. So I'd like to make a motion, well, we already made the motion, I'd like to take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes, done. Steve, I have to sign this too?
Yes.
Any questions on any
Yeah,
of the
this one doesn't have a
reports or on
signature
any of the
Okay.
finance information? Oh, one thing I should say is that we did restructure a little bit in the finance office, that we have a lot of upper level work that needs to be done, that, not as much work for the accounting clerks. And it's budget neutral, so our senior accountant, who's great, has changed to full-time, and we've got the union to agree for our payroll clerk to be part-time, the 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. No union duties will be done by the non-union work as part of this. It's just, we've streamlined the payroll from a few years ago when they came in, that we had a payroll clerk only doing payroll for every day for 2 week, the 2 week cycle, and now we're just, it takes 3 days to do payroll, and then the other days she's doing receivables and other things. So I think it's gonna be good. You'll notice some of that because you're getting a lot more reports every month instead of every quarter or every 6 months, or grants not at all. So I'm excited about that. And if you know anybody that's looking for a part-time payroll job, we would love their resume soon.
Perfect. All right, anything else? Anything else for Marcia? All right, we basically went through the audit,
Yes.
right? So there's no issues. Capital, we're not talking about biz. We're on to the transfers now, part of this. So the first item on the agenda is, and I'll make the motion for discussion. make a motion to approve the proposed interdepartment transfers as noted on the budget versus actual expenditure report through 5/28/24, and reviewed and passed at the June 3rd, 2024 meeting by the Board of Selectmen. Do I have a second? This is nothing that is a surprise to us. This is something we track every month. This is something that the Board of Ed reports to us every month as well. These are the costs that if they budgeted for, these are not actual budgets, this is above and beyond budgets that came in, that they can't validate at budget time. You can't, they don't know how many students are gonna fit certain categories. It's a fluid budget process that we took on our side. If they needed more money, they budget to actual at the time of the budget. And anything that happens after that, we said we'd pick up in our contingency side of this.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that this was planned. This is not out of the blue, this has been planned, we've been doing this for years, and it works well.
And we're again, we're reported every month to us, so
Yep.
it's not a surprise. This is at the end of the year, this is what we anticipate.
Yes.
Numbers change during the year because you can't budget. One year it's less, one year it's more, but that's why it's not in the budget. So, any other discussion on this? All right, all those in favor? Aye, motion passes. And then I'll make a motion to approve the proposed transfers between projects and bonded capital projects fund as noted in the report through 5/31/24 and reviewed and passed at the June 3rd, 2024 Board of Selectmen meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
And this was the $1,600, correct? I think we've gone enough discussion
Yeah,
on
I'd say so.
$1,600. All right, all those in favor? Aye, motion passes. All right, you gave us an update on the cell tower, we got an update on the grants for the radios. Just an update on the pipeline, because that's another thing that could be a legal expense for us.
Yeah, so we have sent the letter signed by all members of the Board of Selectmen to the governor and to the commissioner, Katie Dykes, asking them to meet with us and to allow us to express our concerns about the increase in the compression, the doubling of capacity basically, and they call it increased by compression. I forget what their specific name for it is, but they want to double the capacity of their throughput at that plant. If you watch the Board of Selectmen meetings, there are a lot of people who are concerned about that. The town is also concerned. We have asked them to meet with us. I've had my assistant call the governor's office and Katie Dyke's office, and the governor told me when he was in to visit me 6 weeks ago, and we spent an hour together, you need me, Steve, give me a call. We are doing that. We're going to try to set up a meeting with them. Our primary goal here is, we have to remember that this is primarily regulated by FERC, which is a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They have passed some of the responsibilities that they have regarding the management and regulation of these gas companies to the state. Primarily, the issue we're concerned with is air quality in and around the plant. We have asked the state in the letter to the governor and Commissioner Dykes to require Iroquois to hire independent, approved by the state, testing agencies to go in, test the site now, test it during any construction, and test it after, to understand exactly what particulates, what gases are coming out, et cetera, et cetera. We think that's reasonable and fair, and we're waiting an answer from the governor's office.
I think from our side, we're just more worried about the financial impact, about the legal side of this. I mean,
Yeah, on
it
the
could
legal
be
side of
a
it, I've had
big
yeah.
legal endeavor.
I've had conversations with two lawyers who are environmental lawyers. If we wanted to go after Iroquois, right, or Algonquin, to mount a significant, meaningful campaign to stop them would be very expensive.
Right,
You
that's
know.
our concern, I think. I mean, our concern is safety. I mean, again,
Right. Safety
I don't
is
want
number one.
anybody to think, but our concern is, this would come out of our budget, our
Yes.
operating. This is not something that we're
Yes.
gonna have someone cover, we're not gonna have Karma, whatever that servant,
Right.
help us out. This is strictly on our dime.
Yeah, and the one conversation I had with one lawyer, he said, Steve, it really depends on, are you gonna go after them at FERC in Washington DC?
Right.
Then you have to hire lawyers down there. We would coordinate it for you. It would get very, very expensive. I said, how much? She said, Steve, starting at 40,000 and go on up from there. Depending on the level of expertise and the number of suits you want to bring forth, right? How you want to approach this. Because there's a number of ways you can approach it. My experience, and I know people get really upset at this, is that in looking at this and in past cases, it has been extremely rare if Iroquois can prove the need and can prove that they're going to do this safely. It is extremely rare to stop this sort of increase, this sort of change. I'm not convinced that spending 40, 50,000 more would garner the town anything more than what we're asking for from the state right now, without an expense to the town. Now, different people would agree on those things, but we have to remember, we're spending our residents' money. Should we chase something? It's kind of, in a way, it's not exactly the same, but the cell tower, right? We could go before the state and fight the siting council and hire a lawyer and say, let's say we don't want a cell tower at all. Your chances of winning that are not good.
40,000 is just opening the door for you.
Exactly.
I
I'd
mean,
say
let's
40,000
call it what
different
it
than
is. We've all dealt with legal fees.
Right.
We've all know that corporate legal fees. You don't get anybody for 40,000 kind of take on a company.
No.
That's a door opener. That's a letter sending.
You're probably.
That's one letter getting sent from your attorney, pretty much. So I think, again, safety's first, but I think we got to keep in mind that these are the things that creep into these budgets that get spent, and everybody's then you lose, and all of a sudden it's like we got to pay the bill.
Yeah.
The bill's still left to be paid.
Milford has a big compression facility too, don't they? Have they gone through any of this type of fight? The town of Milford has a big compression facility too.
Yeah,
don't they?
I called them. I haven't gotten a call back. I did speak to the compression station that's in Dover. I talked to the town manager. It's a little bit different there. The county manages that process. And so Putnam County manages it. And he said, well, they're increasing and we're going to get something like $200,000 more in taxes when they do their work over there. I put a call into Milford. I haven't gotten a call back. We're going to continue to pursue that. It's, I don't know how to put it otherwise than saying we could hire attorneys and go after these people, but it's a crapshoot, in my opinion. If we would actually be able to make a change and have Iroquois make a change, and let's say, I think stopping them from building a compression station, I'm sorry, I think FERC is going to approve it. They already have pretty much approved it and put some of the approvals, the air quality, on the state's onus. If we had started 2 years ago, if we had started even before that, Iroquois came to me in my last year in office and said, this is what we're planning to do. That was right before I left office. If we'd started back then, maybe we'd have a better chance, but I still think the chances are really slim. To stop them completely, I think, is not a possibility. It's not.
Right, and then you say how many suits you're going to bring to DC. They're bringing plenty of suits.
And
They are not afraid.
oh no, and they've got incredibly deep pockets and they have no problem.
I did read they spent 15 million in legal fees on one case. 15 million in one case.
Yeah, because they don't want anybody to allow to set a precedent
Right.
Yeah.
in the courts.
Mhm.
And
All right.
they will spend $15 million.
Perfect. All right, just keep us updated,
Yeah,
because we
will
just
do.
need to be aware of if
Yep.
there's gonna be a big legal fee coming. All right, we're on to the debt policy. Now, we had talked about this a couple years ago. We had brought examples. I had sent something to Steve, and Steve and Marcia said they would like to talk to other towns and gather data and present us with their draft for discussion. They gave it to us. Brian wanted to be heavily involved, so I told him there'd be nothing really, decided tonight or anything. But since we have it in front of us, they're both the same document, right? that I'm
They're
holding
two
here?
different. Do you want me to just
No,
go
two.
through it at a high level?
Yeah, go ahead.
we've got two. We've got the policy, and similar to the fund balance, that we've got the policy, and then there's the considerations or all the other things, definitions, other things that I wanted to say that Steve thought were too much for the policy, that, so we have two different documents. The policy itself is kind of basic, that we talk about the different types of debt, that we talk about the debt supported by the general fund, and that's usually what we're thinking of when we're thinking of debt, that the debt that's going to go against the general fund budget, that in some place in there we say that unless it's approved by a separate revenue stream, it goes through the general fund budget. We can't hide it in the special revenue fund or something. That and that debt is, I think, the ones that you've been thinking about when you talk about the debt. There's a number of different things we could use. But we use two things: the assessed valuation target, and the reason for that is that's what the rating agencies are looking at. And then the second one is the debt service target. So one deals with the liability and one deals with the annual payments. There are some that talk about debt per capita. What are we going to do with that? So we didn't include that. And then we talk about debt supported by a designated cash flow stream. We just did debt for the water line, Candlewood Lake water line, and we have to have 100% coverage on that. We couldn't make a profit, so we couldn't say, oh, our policy is to have 120% coverage. No, we can't. We have to only assess the people for the actual debt. So that type of situation, we talk about 100% coverage. Then we talk about debt covering that's paid with fees or another revenue stream, and I'm thinking the WPCA. And those revenue streams aren't leaned against people's houses and things, and they could be more variable. So that one we talk about 120% coverage. And we've got to talk to the attorney, make sure we can make these rules on the WPCA. And we've got to talk to the WPCA. But that's kind of just as an outline of where we're starting, is that there's those two different types of debt. Then we talk about long-term debt approvals and debt refunding. And I have to look back, but I don't think we've gone to town meetings for debt refunding. It's a refinancing of the debt.
Did we or not?
No,
I
I
thought
don't
Tinsley
believe we did,
one
because
year.
remember, under the charter, the responsibility for bonding and setting bonding and doing bonding is the first selectman and the treasurer, John, who was sitting here a minute ago. We're
I
the
thought we
one.
did it once, like for 900,000, we did something like that under Tinsley.
We did, but I don't think we had to go to approvals. I don't
But we
think so.
want to make sure we know what the rules are.
Right, agreed.
What do we
Agreed.
have to do
Yeah.
with that?
If we do, we do, you know,
Mhm.
there's no problem. If we say to people, hey, we got 900,000, we want to re-bond, and we're going to pay 3% versus a 6%, it's a pretty straightforward argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other one are leases. Leases are a liability that we do have in our financial statements a materiality level, so that, you know, a postage machine lease is not material enough. So our materiality threshold right now to capitalize it is $100,000, and we just did a lease at the Board of Ed for $500,000 for copy machines. It seems like we should have something there, that we do put in there the fiscal funding clause, so if it's the debt services in the budget, that we can get out of it. And we sent that to Sandy last week, and she hasn't gotten back to us on it yet, about what, you know, is the interpretation in the charter for leases. We don't talk about leases.
I mean, that's not considered, I mean, I guess technically that's debt service, but that's not in our debt service number that we get approved.
No,
That's
it's in
part of the
operating,
Board of,
it's in the
right?
operating. budget.
Yes.
It's in
But
the
it is a
operating-
long-term obligation.
I
of the
know,
town.
but
It is in the debt service, we have bond, the big category, we've got
Right.
bond and others, but to me, we don't want to see someone go crazy with that. I had one town one time that had their school buses leased, and the fiscal funding clause said, if you don't fund this, you can't purchase, you're agreeing that you can't purchase school buses. I mean, some of these fiscal funding clauses are not really a good way to get out. You couldn't purchase school buses from somebody, you couldn't lease them from somebody else. Okay, well, you can't get out of that, and we don't want that. So we're gonna try to flesh it out. You can take it out, you can change it, but we wanna make sure that we know what the rule, the interpretation of the charter is for that type of debt, because they are a long-term obligation. We don't want, nobody's gone crazy with them, but we don't want that to happen either. And the other part is, we're required to report that, whether it's us or the Board of Ed or the WPCA, we're required to report that under our continuing disclosures within 10 days. We need a vehicle to make sure that we're disclosing them all and to ourselves, to me, so I can report them. And then the last one that I would like to see in here, and again, it's not debt, is compensated absences and special termination benefits. And that's vacation time and money that you give somebody when they leave. If you look at ours, it's $750,000. Okay, so the Board of Ed says, oh, we can't give you a big raise this year, but we'll pay you, you know, $50 a year for every year that you've worked, and we'll pay that at the end. In the budget process, where does that show up? Where does somebody approve that? It would be in the union contract that, if you look at ours, it's $750, that we don't have anything really in there. Look at Monroe's, $7.5 million, and $6.5 million is special termination benefits that they're giving to people that, when they retire, they're giving them a chunk of money. That I just think that, and maybe the attorney will say that, oh no, that they couldn't do that in a union contract without going to all the boards. Is that true? But that's why that's in there. We need to find out more about that, because we want to be able, we don't want to be surprised by that.
Isn't that more HR than debt? Wouldn't that be an HR policy?
It's long-term, but our HR policy covers our HR. What covers the board of, what is the overseer for the Board of Ed? They would have to put it in their HR, and if they wanted to do something like that, then they would just change their policy. That, so I'm just calling it out that it's something that I like in there for that reason.
And I agree with Marcia, because let's say you have a really tight budget year and you're in the union negotiations, you say, listen, I can only give you 3% raise this year, but what I will do is allow you to bank all your PTO, all your vacation, all your sick days forever, right? When I was with JP Morgan, we had guys who had almost 3 years of salary banked based on vacation, all of those things, because the company allowed you to do that. Well, that's an expense to you, but maybe not 20 years down the line. But it doesn't hit your books, right? It's an obligation you're taking on for future expense that you're not really accounting for in your operating budget, right? It should be like our pension. If we're gonna do that, you should probably like a fire truck. This is the way I look at it, and you wanna put money away for that. We know we're gonna have a $7.5 million obligation, right? Over the next 20 years, we should start putting money away for that.
But what is including that in the debt policy? How does that, I mean, other than writing down, we're worried about this, what does it do?
That if we approve this and it covers all the different areas, that we'd have to see how we approve that, like the accounting policy is approved by all 3 boards, and maybe the WPCA, but we have to ask, that's highlighted because we have to check with the attorney on this stuff. But we don't want to be surprised by that. I can see, if they were talking about that, I can see the phone call from Glenn already saying, they're talking about doing this, how do we stop that? And right now, I don't know how to stop that. I don't know what vehicle's there, and maybe the attorney will say, well, here's the vehicle there. So this, maybe we should call it not a debt policy, but.
So we looked at it from a long-term obligation. This is a long-term obligation of the town, just like debt is, 20-year loan. It's an even longer obligation in some cases with the town. And we took a very holistic, whole forest look at this. You guys might say, okay, I don't think that's an issue, we don't need to put it in our debt policy, because it's not truly debt in the sense that most people consider debt. It is an obligation.
Well, I think Eileen just said it right. I mean, it's two different policies in a way. It's a debt policy and a liability policy.
Exactly.
I think
Good
that
point.
and they're all important points. I don't want to belittle the fact that we all can agree that there needs to be controls on items that are not being controlled. That's why
Right.
we're doing the debt right now.
Right.
So, but I'm also of the opinion of that doesn't fit under the debt policy.
We can take it out. We put
That-
all these
that
things
to
in there
me
for you
is-
guys.
I don't wanna cloud the.
Yeah,
Is an HR policy or a liability policy?
that's fine.
Town liability, don't want to, no department can do X, Y, and Z
Right.
On their own
Right.
without, but that's not debt, it's more, in my opinion, more liability. Dan, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I agree. I don't, my objective when we started this years ago, and everybody's, was to have guardrails around bonding. And that's the primary objective. Anything, all this other stuff is good, but it clouds the primary objective.
That's a fair comment. We just wanted to put
Yeah.
every consideration in
no.
there, and we can take it out.
Eileen?
No, I mean, I agree, I think it's stuff we need to consider when we're making these decisions, but I don't necessarily know that it's here.
And that's
Mary?
fine, and the attorney might say, they can't do that without going to a town meeting or something.
Right. And the attorney might also say, I don't care, it's written, they can do whatever they want, so.
That's correct.
Mary,
Yeah,
your
they're
thoughts?
definitely important not to lose track of that things happen. You could have these liabilities, but this might not be the exact place to nail that down.
I don't think we need, I don't want to dilute this document. I want this document to be solid on that.
Clean and crisp.
Clean, crisp, and not diluted with, secondary clauses and this and that, because that, and I'm not being, but that's what gives
No,
it,
that's
that takes the credibility away from a document
Yeah.
sometimes. You'll read, oh, well, look, and I agree it's important. Please don't think that it's not, but I think this really needs to be that, and like we talked about, and it needs to have, and I think you've also nailed it on the two. It's gotta be debt to grand list and debt to, budget, debt to revenue. I think those are your two key, I've read a lot on this myself, those are your two key indicators that most towns are using. Going through this, now I didn't go through this document, I apologize, but going through this one, I also didn't see is, some of the towns put in there what you can bond and what you can't bond, like dollar amounts.
Mhm.
Like we have it and that's in this document somewhere, Marcia, or did I miss that?
There is, it's under
Okay.
section 5.
Okay, I apologize.
And section 5 changes things a little bit.
Yeah.
It's in section 5, the beginning of the second page. To qualify for long-term financing, the project should cost at least $100,000 individually or in the aggregate for related items.
Okay, yep,
And
perfect.
have a minimum useful life of 5 years. No
Yeah.
debt will be considered for periods exceeding the useful life of the project. Exceptions of this can be considered by the Board of Finance for good cause.
Yes. All right.
Also, section 5, I just want to point out
Go
that
ahead.
we talked about this, we spent a lot of time talking about this. It changes the procedures a little bit, that we have a 10-year plan. It incorporates a capital committee because we want that to stay. That we talk about it, we'll have the 10 years, but then it goes down to 5 years for a conceptual budget, because a good capital plan assigns revenue to each of the projects, to each of the years. 10 years is too far out to assign revenue. 5 years is still pretty far out to assign revenue. That But that's a little bit different, that we have the 10-year with just the expenditures and the 5 years with the revenue. And then the Board of Finance reviews that, but you're not approving it or anything, just that 1 year is approved.
All right, so let's go back to section A1.
Okay.
That, I am assuming, ties into the secondary document that you gave us on this long sheet.
Yes.
But most towns, where you have 4, most towns are using 3 that I read on. I did a lot of, most towns are 3%, not 4%.
We're already at 3.82.
I know where we're at, I get
Okay.
that, but that's why I got this, that's why I said you tied it to this.
Yeah. the-
Most towns are operating to 3. Now, are we gonna conform to it, what we're operating now? Or are we gonna conform to, we gotta get this to 3, and that's where most towns are trying to operate at, as a general rule?
That would be a decision of this board. Our thinking was, because we are at 3.4,
3.7.
3.82 or
383, it would be disingenuous to put a lower number like we don't recognize where we are, right? I see your point. I don't disagree with you. If we want to make it 3, I'm fine with that, but then we have to come up with a plan to get
But
there.
we are recognizing this, we're coming out of the debt bubble. Brian also showed us that our debt,
True.
reliance on debt is going way down in the next couple of years.
It is.
So we're coming out of it.
But
Just
we
be-
have projects.
We do have, and I'm open for discussion, I'm just saying,
Something we know we have to do.
most towns are operating at 3. I did a lot of reading on this. 3, and on the other side, they're not operating at 12, they're operating at 10 and trying to get to 8.5, where you have 12 in there.
Mhm.
They are, and we are, if you look at the second page of your document, I'm assuming that's what those numbers are. We're at 9% now, we're gonna head to 10.34, then we're gonna head to 10.5, but then we come back to 9.05 in 2027. So that's where the bubble gets rid of. So are we setting the policy to today's numbers and we're gonna run with it that way? And then also taking into effect what Eileen says, that we are gonna have future policies that are gonna bend this? Or do we bring it back into the norm of other towns are operating to, and we try to maintain this? Again, this isn't the law,
Yeah, no.
this is the best practice.
Yeah. My thinking on that is we have incredibly good financial controls and an understanding of where our expenses are, where our revenue is, and where we're gonna be over the next 5 years. So this town, because we are so financially secure and we understand where we are, can have a 12%. Other towns, we look at, you know, they've got, we were just talking about unrecognized liabilities. We don't do that, right? We are recognizing every single liability. We created a liability for the firemen's stipends,
Right.
right? And created an obligation for the town. So my thinking was, since we are, and I believe this is true, and I don't know if you agree or not, are financially secure and we understand where we are and where we're going, that we can have a little higher risk profile than other towns. Now, if the board disagrees with that, I would not object to keeping it at 10%.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
really-
go ahead. No, Eileen
I
first.
think my only question, you know, what are the rating agency, what is
Exactly.
their, because
Yep.
that's a big impact, we've seen that, I mean, the
But
school bonding was exactly.
that was gonna be one of my points. I wish John were here, you might know. I think it's worse to have a policy that you're not meeting
Yeah.
than to have a
Agreed.
looser policy.
Agreed.
Okay.
That, I agree with that. We can all, however, I'm gonna respectfully disagree with that, Steve.
I'm gonna,
Is, what you're saying right now is, yes, you're there, Marcia's in this seat, this Board of Finance, we're not writing this policy for us,
That's true. We're writing it
okay?
for the-
This is to carry on what we've built. Now, your seat changes, her seat changes, this Board of Finance seat changes,
Things could change.
things are gonna change.
yeah,
Good point.
And we're not writing this, we've decided, we've worked hard, and Dan, 6 years, we've been this 6 years, getting to this point of, we're on top of this debt, we worked through the debt bubble, we've built up the general fund, we've built such a foundation right now for the next wave of people to take over this process. the policy is meant to carry on. Not that we have the people in place sitting here right now, and we all know what could change if the
Yeah.
seats change.
Yeah, yeah,
We lose some valuable
That's-
knowledge.
yeah. That's a fair consideration.
And I should have had those highlighted, and one time I had them highlighted, that, because those, we wanted input on those. With the 12%, we did add that it could only be for, if we did a major thing of infrastructure, it could only
Like a
be
school.
for 5 years to try and get that debt in. And it was based on where we are today, that,
I like that one.
Yeah.
That here's our target, but if there's
Yeah.
a specific project with a plan to get back in compliance, then it's acceptable.
Yeah.
And I think too, when we've looked at the numbers, we're always looking ahead, but we haven't, I think it would be nice to look back and see where we were and where we are now, because I think we can see that progression, that we know that we have the Candlewood Lake Elementary School thrown in there, but, you know, it'd be nice to see that progression of where we were coming in 6 to 8 years ago and where we are now and looking forward.
Well, we were well below it, because again, the taking on the 70 million of the,
But we
the
were also
school.
bonding
yeah.
everything, we were bonding everything in the capital.
Yeah, but if you
I
do
can
this,
give it
we had the graph,
I'll get the-
we've
Oh,
had the
thank
graph already, you had it in one of your presentations of the debt. We could see that without the school, we're like so in line with all the other towns, we're only at like 20 or 30 million dollars in debt, $30 million in debt, which if you take 30 million versus our revenue, and you take 30 million versus our grand list, we're way below the 3% threshold, and we're way
Yes.
below the 10% threshold. The $80 million that we took on chunked us up. And you can see, and maybe Marcia and I were working on that, because that was one of the graphs I had made for the town budget, when people say we're the highest in debt. But if you take away the school, we're
not.
right in line, and we're well below these thresholds.
And every town that has taken on a school goes
Correct.
bang.
Yeah.
So the graph will show you, I mean, we'll get the graph,
Yeah.
thank you, and that's good, but I think you'll see the graph is pretty, you can see the
But I
spike.
think it would be a good idea, to Eileen's point, is to go back and create a small chart. Here's what our general fund balance was over each year. Here's our indebtedness, to show some of that historical detail.
Yeah, but it would be not against our general fund, it would be against our revenue, and it would be against our
Yes,
grand list.
but understanding your general fund as your
General
reserve
Yeah.
and, you know, your rainy day fund, if there's
Right.
an emergency, those things matter too to rainy agencies.
Yes, oh, yes,
The 10% roughly came from the Moody's. Moody's talks about 10% to be AAA. They have a little bit different, where they change some of the numbers around on how they calculate things. I can't remember what the different formulas were, but that roughly did come from Moody's.
I see your point too, Dan,
Yeah.
about making a
Policy
policy
that you're gonna
you're
violate.
gonna violate. But we're gonna come out of violation here in a hurry.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And part of the planning going forward is,
And go back
Now-
into violation. when
right,
start
we
doing
are gonna
that.
go back into
But we
violation.
have to, but this has.
But again, once you start going out of the violation, if your numbers are higher, they creep higher anyway. So if we
Yeah.
put 12 in there, someone's gonna say, well, 14's no different than 12, and then before you know it, it just cascades.
Is there a way to, what about the concept that we're going to target being at the median of other AAA towns in Connecticut as rated?
One of the towns that you gave me did have
Yeah,
that,
that's what I thought.
the comparison. And for the graph, it sounds like we should go
Weston.
10 years back and 10 years forward. I think it was Newtown that had it. But if we
Maybe,
did it 10
Richard.
years back, 10 years forward, with a rough calculation of what if we did a police station, I can get that.
Yeah, for our next meeting, whatever Eileen wanted to, we'd have to make sure we have it for next meeting, because Brian will be here too, and
I
then he,
won't, we have to talk about that, I won't have vacation.
oh, all right,
Yeah,
well,
but yeah.
we don't have to approve it even
There you
then,
go.
right? We can have another discussion.
Yeah.
This isn't something that's dire.
Okay.
This is something we're gonna accomplish, though.
Yeah, exactly. Accomplish
the-
it.
We're not even-
Okay, so it's all good, we'll still get stuff and talk about it.
And if a bunch of people aren't here the 10th, we could do the 7th, 12th.
summer.
Yeah, just run with it. If we have four, we have four.
Right.
August, it
Right.
isn't gonna make a difference if we don't do this till August.
Right.
in
We're
the
not
big
talking
picture.
about capital till November, so.
That's what I'm saying,
Right.
so we're fine. August is still fine target,
Yeah.
so I would not stress on that. I think it's good we got a draft in
Yeah,
front of
those
us.
are good stuff.
So
Yeah,
let's
great.
be thankful we got a draft. I think we gotta think about those numbers.
Yeah.
Again, I understand going to where we're at, I understand not being a compliant. Like I say, Steve, I don't think this policy, I'm more worried about changes. It's not what we've had here. We've had a pretty consistent
Yeah.
Board of Finance for 6 years now. You've been around, Marcia's been with us for the same amount of time as I've been here, so I don't think that's the concern.
We're planning for the future here.
Well, that's what a debt policy
Yeah.
does. I mean, that's what we're, exactly, that's by definition. So I would like us to consider those numbers and look at other towns again, maybe check with Newtown again and make sure, I mean, their debt policy was 3 and 10, going down to 8.5. I think they were 3 and 9 with an 8.5 target.
Yeah.
Um,
And I have I have 4 books on my desk that I haven't gotten through all of them on, best practices and things for debt policies from the GFOA and other places. 2 others, if I could just talk about
Yeah,
a few more
go ahead.
things, that we talk about random facilities, property financed by obligations, that if we were to take the center school and if it had debt on it still, and if we were to rent it out to the local plumbing company, all of a sudden that debt becomes taxable debt, and it has ramifications because it's no longer being used by us. That's in there just because I tried to get anything that was for us, Board of Ed, or WPCA, that was the umbrella into the policy. And we've got to check with the attorney, how do we make sure that they have to stick to that? But they couldn't do it either. They couldn't take their building, which was financed by debt, and rent it out. So we need to just keep the control over that. Nobody's doing that, but that's why that's in there, and it's recommended to be in the debt policy. The other is the official statements and the post-issuance. That came from Sandy Dawson, the bond counsel, had recommended that we have a post-issuance compliance procedures. They're 12 pages long. They dominate that other thing that, and that's trying to put them into, on Sunday, I have a brand new pool and I've got everyone out swimming and I'm working on it.
Well, you should be at the pool instead of doing this.
But I was trying to put what she had written into real life words that we can understand and instead of
So this is the
legalese.
compliance and guidance document.
Correct. And that's recommended by her because there's a lot of rules in there of things that we have to do. But I didn't want to clutter it up here except for the parts that deal with everybody, that you need to tell us within 10 days about the debt and things like that. And then the official statement is, it's a huge thing that I tried to put a few internal controls on that in that thing as well. That's my own wording and nothing. The one from Sandy was the post-issuance compliance. So we need to have that someplace. She had it as a separate policy idea, and we've put it in here. Use of derivatives, Steve knows more about that. We don't want them. And then the policy review, that it will be reviewed every 3 years. What would it be reviewed for? Well, the percentages, but also they've never come to us, the Economic Development Committee, to talk about tax increment financing or something like that. There's other types of debt, we just haven't considered them. So I just wanted to try to make it clear that this isn't saying we can't do them, we just haven't considered it at this time. That's it.
Good start.
It is. If we set this, right, at a certain percentage that we agree to, can we work backwards from that and figure out what we can afford and cannot afford for our new projects? Can we reverse it and say, okay, here's what we have that we can carry forward? We have 20 million or 40, whatever the number is, I don't know.
Whatever the room is.
This is what we have. Do we go back to these people and say, hey, we have $40 million to get 2 projects done, or whatever it may be, 50 million, I don't know, again, I'm throwing out numbers, and I'm talking so far off the cuff, I don't even know what I'm talking about. But if we had 50 million, do we say, all right, police, you get 20, library, you get 30, come back to us with some kind of a plan, because this will fit?
It's gonna take some assumptions on grant list and budget.
Agreed, I mean, but it's gonna be educated
Yeah, of
assumptions.
course.
And this way, instead of somebody like, I don't wanna get it to the point where we get a library, and I'm throwing numbers. So $60 million for a library, community center, and 30 million for the police, well, we know we can't afford 90
No,
million.
yeah.
So can we reverse it and say, hey, this is what we probably can afford under our debt policy?
Yeah. And here's the room we have in 2027, 2028, and then
And
fit those
reverse
in.
it and say, hey, so then
Bring it back.
when we start these people on these projects looking at things, they're not looking to build 70 million, you know, they're looking to, all right, we know we gotta be in the 30 million range. And I don't know what the range is, again, these are
Yeah.
just round numbers.
You're talking hypothetically.
Yeah,
But we
totally.
want to stay within our guidelines, within our means
With
to
what
do
we can
this.
afford, but still accomplish
Yes.
what we wanna accomplish.
Right.
Anybody else wanna add to this? All right. I don't think there's anything else, there's no public comment, I'll make a motion to adjourn, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?